Good evening, I'm Eugene Chan with Straight Talk. Our guest tonight is Mr. Hendrick Sin. He is co-founder and vice chairman of CMGE Technology Group Limited and founding partner of the China Prosperity Capital Fund, a leading venture capital firm with a primary focus on technology investment. He has also been an investment banker and has had over 12 years of entrepreneurship experience in the Greater Bay Area. We have invited Mr. Sin tonight to give us his perspective on Hong Kong taking the lead role in innovation and technology for the region. Welcome, Hendrick.
Thank you for having me, Eugene.
Right, President Xi has given Hong Kong the role of becoming an international innovation and technology hub under the 14th Five-Year Plan. At Straight Talk, we are planning a series on the innovation and technology sector. Last week, we had Professor Wang Gamfei from the Chinese University.
My good friend.
And he talked on as an academia in the research and development. This week, we want to tap on your experience as a tech entrepreneur. KF told us that the previous government had invested over $150 billion into this sector, but some viewers, they don't feel the result as much as they like, saying that we are kind of having a slow progress for the last 25 years. What is your view on that statement? And actually, what is the current status of Hong Kong's innovation and technology sector?
I think we are in a good position for a quantum leap, Eugene. I think Kerry administration has poured in 150 billion Hong Kong dollars, which is a big initiative, bigger than ever in the past in terms of the investment into innovation. You know very well we have very good universities in Hong Kong, right? Top 100, 5 of them. And we have 2 very good incubators, Science Park, Cyberport. And so I think we have the right ingredients. Now, government give more support into this sector. And I think with all these elements put into place, and also the central government policies also giving us the status or the hopes to become the international R&D innovation center, I think this is the very good goal. And at the same time, I think everyone is working towards it, government, private practices, and private monies. And I think all that with enough time given, I think the results will come out gradually.
Right, I like the word you use, quantum leap.
Yes.
Meaning that things should happen in the foreseeable future. KF also mentioned that a term called upstream, midstream, and downstream. As he said, for upstream, they talk about all the researchers and all the work that we've done here at the universities. We are very strong.
Yes.
But when you talk about downstream, which is more or less your forte, which is the commercialization of the industry,
yes,
we are kind of a bit lacking. Do you agree in the last few years?
I think it's making progress. I think currently we are facing a lot of innovations at the part of the university side. As I mentioned, like academia, like Professor KF Wong, I think they have done a lot to make innovation happen in the lab in terms of writing papers, right? I think, but translating the technology into usable, applicable applications, products, services, it takes a bigger market to test it. I think Hong Kong, as part of the Greater Bay Area hub, I think we can make good use of these platforms by testing in a bigger market. But I don't believe GBA or China is the only market, but maybe it is an easier, accessible market for us to test our prototypes, to test our thinking philosophies. So,
our chief executive, Mr. John Lee,
yes,
in his manifesto, he's also mentioned that he'd like to see the commercialization of all this technology transfer. So, you've also been in the industry. What has been the challenges or actual bottlenecks in the past? You have a very good experience in all this because you are the election committee member in the sector. You are also one of the director of Cyberport, not to mention a chairman of the Macro Fund Investment Committee. So you basically will have the pulse of what has happened. So why hasn't we done as well as we should in the last few years?
I think we are heading to the right direction, Eugene. Yeah. As I see in Cyberport, so we have created 5 unicorns in the last few years. It's not overnight success. Actually, has been a lot of innovations and a lot of hard work to make that happen. Also, from government support, from private support. So I think in terms of the challenges we face, I think for startups, what I see is always peoples and money, right? For people, I think to get the right people into this sector is something I think it takes a bit of time to make it happen because as you know, Eugene, very well, I think a lot of students in the universities, they tend not to have the first choice, perhaps, in STEM or in engineering. Maybe they want to be doctors, they want to be lawyers, more so. I think this is traditional Chinese families' values. But it is different in the States, like where I had my education. I think engineers and scientists has a slightly more opportunities elsewhere. But Hong Kong, I think we need to have a ecosystem where I think when people study this major in the engineering, they can find good jobs with good pays. I think this is happening, and that's why I think the ecosystem is evolving. Government and private sectors are also finding ways to support these startups. But because of COVID and because of other issues, I think has been different cycles that we see. But I think more importantly, I think good startups, they will find ways to get the capital. But I also urge the government to actually find more opportunities to support these startups. I think even at difficult times, I think it's important to stay healthy and to stay upbeat for these startups. And this is something that we have been doing in Cyberport. And I think, for example, our macro fund has been investing regularly on companies with good and caliber, as well as with the right qualities we always support.
Well, Hendrick, I mean, you had painted a more positive picture for the viewers because it's basically it takes time and a change of mindset. So if I'm going to ask you, what are the critical success factors of the innovation technology, what would you say? Okay,
I think to find a pain point in the market and how you can address it, right? And like myself, I'm an entrepreneur. So I think this is important to get the market attention if you have a product or you have a service that address certain market needs. So I think it is important also not to forget when you have innovation, you need to have a market that can absorb this innovation. So I think Hong Kong is moving to that direction because of these GBA opportunities or global opportunities. I think to apply our innovations and technologies into a bigger market, bigger perhaps than our 7 million populations to test that idea.
You mentioned the ecosystem has evolved, and we know that there's a new alliance that was set up like a couple of weeks ago. It's called the Hong Kong Science and Technology Innovation Alliance, where KF is also one of the vice president and also the secretary general. And he said one of the objectives is to bring together the government, the industry, academia, and research circles. So you being in the industry, is the industry being properly or appropriately represented in that? And can you see this alliance being able to helping the ecosystem to evolve at a faster pace? What do you think?
I would think is a responsibility of everybody. It's not just an alliance. I think we have different alliances, we have different organizations, we have selection committee, we have a lot of consultation groups. I think the government under John, I think is very receptive to innovation ideas.
I mean, he actually came to the ceremony.
He actually came to the ceremony, and in fact, I came to many ceremonies. So I think we are very grateful to see his support, and I think his continuous support. I think more importantly is to get the Northern Metropolis as well as Hetao, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, because I spent a lot of time in China, although I spend a lot of time living in the States as well. But I see GBA opportunities to be crucial in terms of our IT sector growth in the future. So I think to get all these great policies and ideas implemented so that we can have more access to a bigger market, but also with the right guidance and also all the supports to get our services.
Yeah, Hendrick, before we
promoted.
go to a break, I want to ask you a quick question. People talk about startups, eventually the word unicorn will come in.
Yes.
So for a quick question to ask you, you've been there,
Yes.
and how do we, having more startups successful and making it to be a unicorn, even listing in Hong Kong, what do we have to do to help them?
I think in terms of startups, I think you need to give them the most important is, as I mentioned, peoples and money, right? I think supply of people, the right set of skills, I think is important, not only in Hong Kong, perhaps we can have overseas Chinese coming back with know-how and specialty to come back to do startups. And I think the capital is, I think Hong Kong needs to get more international funds and including mainland Chinese funds to come to Hong Kong to get all these startups also having access to this capital.
Right. Okay. Hendrick, let's take a break and we will be right back. Welcome back. With us tonight is Mr. Hendrick Sin, and we have been talking about Hong Kong's leadership role in innovation and technology from his perspective as a tech entrepreneur and investor. So Hendrick, in the first part, as I said earlier, you used the word quantum leap, saying that the last government has invested with the money, and now with the people, with the ecosystem evolving, you think things is going to turn good in the next few years, which is very encouraging for the viewers because Hong Kong, mainly as an international financial center, although being number 3rd, we need more industry to keep our city thriving. So one area we want to ask you is, I have to repeatedly say that issue is KF mentioned in last week that we have a difficulty of making commercialization of the actual technology transfer, as you just said earlier, same as in Mr. John Lee's manifesto. And being next to the Greater Bay Area is one big advantage because one of the problems we have is we only have a 7.35 million population where they have 80 million next door.
Right.
But in that context, yes, we have a bigger market, but we are also in direct competition with our mainland sister cities like Shenzhen, Guangzhou, Shanghai, and even Beijing in INT. Do we have a niche?
I think we do have a niche. I think we have niche in certain sectors, not everything. For example, fintech, because Hong Kong is very strong in the finance industry, right? Applying fintech technology into a bigger territory perhaps is a winning formula. For example, biomed, medtech. I think we have very good universities, very good hospital systems, and how to apply technology into that sector. So I think Hong Kong might have a chance to succeed in certain strategic areas. So if we can incubate those areas further, I think there is a higher chance of success. KF mentioned about difficulty in technology translation. I think if we can apply more capital into these academic areas. What I meant is let the capital, like myself, I think we have been looking into universities, laboratories, products. I think we can tell what can be useful and what can be perhaps applicable into a bigger market. And let the capital and the academia talk. And we are, I think, in the process of doing so and have been bringing a lot of these technologies into a bigger market in GBA. So I think it is something possible, so strategic areas and applying capital and allow, I think these good technologies, they have the certain opportunities to try it out because the capital will lead them to the market and they also have also, I think, put into the right people's team, and perhaps will make the project a success.
Right. Hendrick, you're saying that we have some niche in biomed or even fintech. But Hong Kong, apart from being an international financial center, we are also good in transportation, aviation, and also a trade center as part of the national 14th five-year plan.
Yes.
Has that be able to support the INT work, that the whole industry?
I think so. I think it is all part of the bigger ecosystem, right? I think in all these areas, trade or shipping, you can also apply a technology into that particular segment. For example, logistics is an example, and AI is an example in all this automation. So I think that this is all possible, and also I think by finding the right strategic segment for the government to support, I think with a focus, and with also I think the retooling of the skill sets, for example, from traditional industry, and then by applying, I think, specialists and making technology and with that traditional industry to become a new hybrid industry. I think that is giving these industry further energy, plus providing more sort of labor into supporting that.
Right. Hendrick, you repeatedly mentioned that resources are very important. Like, I think like all walks of life, we need money injection to get the engine starting. And maybe that's why the Financial Secretary, Paul Chan, has announced that there's a launch of a $5 billion tech fund in August to help support the local tech companies. I'm sure part of your request from your election committee subsector, and also to attract foreign startups. So will this actually attract even more support from other private equity funds and to come in to help our startups? What do you think?
Okay, this is called a strategic fund. Strategic fund, I think they have a focus in getting some, I think, larger tech companies to come to Hong Kong. With that, they may open up R&D center in Hong Kong and provide employment opportunities. And I think that is very important because these bigger tech companies will bring in a lot of new opportunities for local Hong Kong IT practitioners. I think this is the initiative from our Mr. Paul, Financial Secretary. I think this is a couple with other funds, for example, Futures Fund and ITVF, that I think have different focus and investing into different stages of the IT sectors and startups, and that may create good complementary results.
Yeah, Hendrick, with a better ecosystem, with more funds, hopefully with more private equities fund to attract more foreign startups, this is all the direction we want to get. And maybe let's see what our chief executive, when his policy address comes up, whether these are some of the KPIs. But one factor that we repeatedly mention in our show to our guests are the geopolitical tensions between motherland and US, and also with the war in Russia and Ukraine. Has any of this affect the attractiveness of Hong Kong for foreign capital to come in? Because one thing people are very concerned is whether Hong Kong now is on the international chessboard. Can we still function as an international financial center? One factor being, will money still come in or leave Hong Kong maybe? How do you see that in your sector? So
because I take part in investment, I have heard a lot of startups in Hong Kong, they have difficulty in getting fundraising done in the last 2-3 years because of COVID and perhaps because of other political or social concerns. So I think this is something that startups that we see they are facing. So I think this is not optimal, but this is where I think
it's getting better.
It's getting better, but I think the government having what you just mentioned, the strategic fund, futures fund, ITVF, this is all about capital getting into the startups' hands. I think that can be done more because Hong Kong does not have a funds of fund.
Right.
If Hong Kong government consider, which I also propose at different times, that with more capital, funds of funds, that means private capital will match. For example, government put in 40% and 60% coming from private sector. That will give the bigger pool of money to support these startups, even at difficult times. So I think it's all about the ecosystem being built up at a bigger scale. So I think different policies, I think our chief executive are considering at the moment.
Hendrick, just now we touched on the foreign money, but let's move on, going back to the GBA, where the mainland is doing well, and let's work together and collaborate and synergize. I mean, you have 13 years in the mainland, and you had 2 lines of businesses, so you know what are they thinking. And to facilitate cooperation in Shenzhen, the Hong Kong government is building called a Hong Kong Shenzhen Innovation Technology Park, which in the Lok Ma Chau Loop, and focuses on 6 areas, such as the healthcare technology that you just mentioned, big data and artificial intelligence, robotics, new material, microelectronics, and financial technology. So is this something that is going to make a turnaround difference for Hong Kong businesses? What do you think in this new area?
Yes, I think it is very important. I think this is in line with what I believe is strategic segments, right? So you mentioned 6 areas. I think these are the areas that they try to incubate more innovations. At the same time, there are policies that allow more data transfer. For example, mainland data, Hong Kong data being collaborative. So I believe that will have a good chemistry of good results. I think all these are happening in maybe Hetao and also Northern Metropolis. That means these are Hong Kong territory. That means I think we have the convenience, and we have all these not only supports from Hong Kong government and also PRC governments. I think it's easier to attract people to go there and to set up their office.
Hendrick,
getting together.
In the last question to you, you have 30 seconds. You being many guests of our show have always been passionate about the youth development in Hong Kong. We want, President Xi has said the youth are an important pillar for Hong Kong. And you have been in different positions. You are president of the IPROA. You are also president of the Youth Council, Youth Development Commission. But you said earlier, our youth are more like the medical faculty specialties you want to specialize in. What will be your advice to the government to help our youth to go in this very exciting area of innovation technology, where you said is about to explode? What will you ask the government to do?
In short, I think to promote some success stories. I think to promote some role models. I think to give, youth more the opportunity to see the future. By entering into this market, this is a good path, and this is something.
Anything else apart from role models?
I think also opportunities that open up, not from the past.
All right, okay. So Henry, I'm afraid that's all the time we have. And Mr. Sin, as an entrepreneur in innovation technology, making it as a unicorn in the US market and now have become listed in Hong Kong, has set a precedent for others to follow that and shown that Hong Kong can be a leader in innovation technology. Have a good week, stay healthy, and good night.